As indicated, today is a very important anniversary that is so often overlooked, the anniversary of those 9 children who faced militarized white supremacy as they were just seeking an education which this country owes to every child. And we know that it was Brown v. Board that overturned the Plessy Doctrine. But in spite of Brown v. Board's decision, there is still so much segregation all over our country. Over half of the children in this country are in deeply segregated schools, and our state is one of those states. You all may be aware that there is a lawsuit, the LAND lawsuit, the Latino Action Network against the state of New Jersey, has sued the state for its education segregation. We are number 6 in segregation for Black students, number 7 in segregation for Latinx students. And because of the tightness and the clear vision, the clear moral vision of New Jersey state constitution, it is clear that segregation for any reason is unconstitutional. And so that's why we're here today. We're here today because our state is functioning against its own constitution, because so many of our children are living, are being educated in schools that are separate and unequal, that in this state that is so blue, we like to claim, so wealthy, we like to claim, is a state where Plessy is still alive, where segregation is still alive. And today we are deciding as a community, as a state, as a coalition, we are saying no more. And so as we're here, we are here to learn, but we're also here to take action. Our governor will not be with us today, and that is a crying shame. And so we're here to take action. There's so many electeds who will pop in via Zoom, and electeds who will be in the space today. A few will be in the space today, and we're here to let them know that no more to segregation because of, one, the material harms that it inflicts on primarily non-white students, but also the psychic harms that it inflicts on both those who benefit from segregation, who profit from segregation, but also those who live on the underside of segregation.
New Jersey is a segregated place. As Pastor Francois said, it's the 6th most segregated state in the United States. It's worse than the states of the Confederacy. It's worse than all the states of the Confederacy except Texas. And this is ironic in the sense that New Jersey has some of the strongest civil rights laws and has some of the most powerful principles of equity that lie in abeyance. Segregation is never about choices. Sometimes people like to say we're segregated today because people have chosen to be segregated. That's one of the most false things that people ever say. Segregation is about profound levels of discrimination, particularly against African Americans and Latinos. Profound levels of discrimination in mortgage lending. A Black family in New Jersey that earns $175,000 is less likely to qualify for a prime loan than a white family that earns $40,000. As African American and Latino seek housing, they are systematically steered to certain types and places in the community, and white families of the same income, credit history, and education are steered away from them. We have exclusionary zoning that shapes our land use. We place the affordable housing in the poorest non-white communities. Systematic, continual, illegal, unredressed discrimination that shapes our country. Segregation is illegal and it's detrimental, it's destructive. Martin Luther King said that segregation is the modern form of slavery with certain sorts of legal niceties. Segregation destroys children's opportunities to graduate from high school and goes to college. It destroys children's opportunities to find middle-income jobs and wages. It destroys opportunities that the children that are victims of segregation have to shape and be part of America. Segregation creates isolation and hopelessness. It never works. It never has worked. And the Supreme Court was correct when they said that it creates a situation that's inherently unequal. The percentage that meet or exceed standards. If you take a look at the percentage of poor kids in a school district, you can predict with 91.91 correlation, not almost overwhelming, the test scores. If you look at the poverty in the school district, you can predict the test scores with almost perfect accuracy. And so when people are talking about schools that are failing, schools that are low performing, every school that reaches that level of poverty has the same kinds of test scores. And there's very little power to change those things all by themselves. Despite some gentrification in the city and the state's growing diversity, the urban districts have remained intensely segregated at apartheid levels. So you can see Atlantic City went from 91 to 96. Camden stayed at 99. Elizabeth is 92. Jersey City went down a little bit to 85, but still profoundly segregated. Newark is at 92. Patterson at 95. Trenton at 99. These are apartheid levels of segregation in all the major cities of the country. One of the most progressive states in the country with one of the best constitutions. There is urban apartheid in almost every school district. And that urban apartheid, as it destroyed children's lives in the past, continues to destroy children's lives and opportunity in the future. And it's not their fault. It's not their choice. It's what's being imposed upon them. It is the modern system of slavery. Many suburban districts have become more diverse as Black and Latino families have moved to the suburbs. And if you look at America, more than half of all Black and Latino families live in the suburbs. If you look at Black and Latino families in the middle class, 2/3 have moved to the suburbs. If you look at Black and Latino married families with children, 80% have moved to the suburbs. As Black and Latino families move to the suburbs, they experience stunning levels of housing discrimination. The Black families that earn $185,000 a year they have less prime loan credit than white families that earn 40. That limits their choices. In New Jersey, real estate agents show Black families a whole different series of suburbs than they show whites of similar education, income, and credit history. If there's affordable housing built in the suburbs, it tends to be in the poorer, more diverse suburbs, not in the wealthier and whiter ones. And these systematic levels of discrimination not only hurt Black families' opportunity, they often lose the value of their houses as these communities resegregate. They are diverse for a while, and the forces of steering, the forces of mortgage lending, the forces of exclusionary zoning, the exclusionary white powerful suburbs that are isolated and out of limits for Black and Latino families, they cause the resegregation of these older communities. This is a map that shows New Jersey's racially diverse places. And if you can take a look at this map, you can see northern New Jersey. You can take a look at the entire state in the middle. You see the Camden area and the Trenton area. And this is in 1999 and 2000. And if you're looking at this map, the areas that are red are school districts that are predominantly non-white. And in 1999, there were 39. The schools that are orange are highly diverse. They're between 40 and 60% non-white. The schools that are green are moderately diverse, between 20 and 40% non-white, and the blue schools are overwhelmingly white. So you can see that in 2000, there were 39 predominantly non-white suburbs, some of the poorest places in New Jersey, often poorer than the cities they surround. You can see 44 highly diverse, 76 diverse, and about 208 predominantly white. Look a decade later. If you take a look a decade later, you have now 70 of the suburbs are predominantly non-white, up from 44. You have 100 moderately diverse suburbs. You have the predominantly white 147. So you can see integration is changing America. The suburbs in America are different now than they were in the civil rights movement. They are diverse. In some ways, this integration of the suburbs was the greatest hope of the civil rights movement, the unfinished business of Martin Luther King. These suburbs that are racially diverse are the beloved communities that he sought to create. The bad news is because of relentless discrimination in school boundary destroying and steering and mortgage lending, these suburbs are forced to resegregate. These suburbs that were once diverse are predominantly non-white. They have been redlined. Their business districts have hurt. Their tax base has taken a hit. They are being treated the same way that Camden and Trenton and all the other big cities were. They're the same forces that imposed slavery on those districts is imposing the same slavery in dozens of the older inner ring suburbs. Racially diverse towns and districts are in trouble, but they also create a powerful opportunity for change. There are twice as many members of the New Jersey legislature that live in racially diverse suburbs as live in majority white suburbs. Twice as many members of the legislature. There are twice as many members of Congress. These racially diverse suburbs elect governors. They elect senators. They're powerful places. and they need to exercise their power. If there's going to be a solution here, these places, in addition to the central cities, have to be heard. They're not at the table. They don't have an identity. And if they don't participate, you can see what's going to happen. They create a powerful political opportunity for change. What we want to do is we want to maintain this diversity. These beloved communities where you have racial diversity, where you have opportunity, where you have better race relations, we want to help them maintain their diversity and maintain that status forever so that they can be strong and that they can renew each other, and that the advent of a few people of color doesn't mean that the real estate market is going to destroy the community, the banks are going to destroy the community, discrimination is going to go on. This is the metropolitan ring of Trenton. And you can see all the schools in their pie charts. You can see the schools in the inner ring suburbs. You can see Trenton, you can see Hamilton Township. Now, one of the things that's, I think, interesting is you take a look at Hamilton Township, you look at Lawrence Township, you look at East Windsor. These are districts, they're almost perfectly integrated if you're thinking about the region. These places, if every school district were like these school districts, if every one school district had the composition that Hamilton, Lawrence, and East Windsor has, if everyone was like that, there would be no segregation in the Trenton metropolitan area. There would be not a single segregated school. If every school district could be as opening and welcoming as Hamilton, if every school district could be opening as welcoming as Lawrence, if every school district could be as opening and welcoming as East Windsor, we would abolish segregation in the Trenton metropolitan area. This doesn't seem so scary to me. This seems like if they can do it, and these are high performing districts that send their children to college. These are some of the best districts in the state, and they're doing everything right. They are the beloved communities, but the problem is there's not enough Hamiltons, Lawrences, and East Windsors. If you look beyond, there are wealthy, white, predatory districts that will undermine and hurt the other districts, will shape the discrimination. But if everyone could be like that in Trenton, there would be no segregation. In this state, with this mighty constitution, we have powerful institutions that profit by segregation. We have charter schools that profit by education with management companies that grow rich. We have housing developers who spend twice as much building low-income housing in poor neighborhoods and powerfully try to keep that housing out of other areas. We have law firms that charge $500,000 to help white districts secede from their relationship with black districts. We have law firms that take public money in white districts and systematically, illegally, are contrary to all the laws of New Jersey. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars attacking the poor districts they're partnering with, humiliating the poor districts they're partnering with, exhausting the poor districts they're partnering with, bankrupting the poor districts they're partnering with, demoralizing the poor districts they're partnering with, and illegally seceding. And the administration, even the present administration, is allowing these constant secession, illegal secessions to occur that are demoralizing, that are contrary to law, that prevent the possibility of this state from fulfilling its affirmative duty under the New Jersey Constitution to create an integrated system. There's a fabulous opportunity here in your midst to do something. You have the best constitution in the country to do this. You have a magnificent Supreme Court, but thus far you've been stonewalled. No one's listening. Predatory for-profit corporations are making millions of dollars, creating more segregation. The enemies of integration in the beloved society are in force, they are rich, they are powerful, and they are indifferent. You have to participate. New Jersey is more segregated than the Confederacy. New Jersey should not be more segregated than the Confederacy. Amen. Thank you.
Earlier, it takes work to create a segregated system. There's been a lot of policy that has designed those segregated systems, and we can even see, despite the benefits of the school finance reform that New Jersey undertook in the early 2000s, which really have helped the state move forward in a variety of ways, how fragile that is. The attacks on that system of equitable funding have been increasing over recent years. And until you get to a place where you're not dividing people by oppressor and oppressed, but in a segregated way, you can't sustain, the equitable allocation of educational resources.
Segregation is not just about, again, a feeling, but there are real tangible cost and benefits to segregation, which I think is part of the reason we might answer, why does it persist? And so I particularly wanted to concentrate on white student segregation, because often when we talk about segregation, we talk about Black and Latinx students being segregated, but there's a corollary to that. When we looked at the map that Professor Orfield put up, we saw the green areas with lots of predominantly white school systems. And I do think that the argument that I make is that given the history of race and what it means and meant to be raised as white, and how that correlates with certain social capital, real capital, money, that there are benefits to maintaining white student segregation that occur in the form of monopolization of school funding, given the correlation between tax base and whiteness, a correlation in terms of social capital. Peer-to-peer learning is a huge part of what creates a quality education as well. So when you have white students who are aggregated in districts that are identifiably white, it allows for those districts to continue, the rich get richer. They're able to continue to accumulate the kinds of tangible and intangible resources that go into creating high quality schools and opportunities based on their attendance at high quality schools. And so I think speaking as a lawyer, right, we tend to look at segregation from the school segregation from the perspective of equal protection doctrine, this idea that Black and brown students are being deprived of equal protection of the law. I wanted to look at it from the perspective of how do we regulate a monopoly, because what is happening here, again, given the history of race and the way it correlates with wealth, income, and many other things, white segregation leads to monopolization, opportunity hoarding, resource hoarding, and how do we destabilize monopolies is a different way to look at this, focusing specifically on white students and the benefits to white students that accrue what costs and detriments to non-white students. And
the point is, a segregated school system probably is a school system that's rooted in a segregated neighborhood, segregated employment opportunity, segregated opportunity to own a home, segregated opportunity to get credit, segregated opportunity to own a business. So a segregated school is not just a school where the people got different colors. It's a school where people have different life opportunities and options. It's a school where people's life chances are routed and relegated, generally speaking, based on their skin color.
I offer the advice in this pandemic of inequality and lost opportunity in both education and housing, which are quite linked together, because housing segregation is the #1 cause of school segregation. And so you need to attack both in order to particularly achieve educational equality. I have just heard Pastor Francois lay out a plan, and that satisfies my first element, that you must have a plan for school diversity and integration and equality before any litigation ends, hopefully with a successful victory for the plaintiffs in the suit in proving that New Jersey is legally segregated and there must be a remedy. So yes, plan the remedy now. Don't wait for the end of the court case. Use the legislation to pass something that will promote school integration. The second thing you need is the very format which exists today at this conference, and that is a movement, an organization, a community activists and advocates for this. No school litigation, even when it won in the court, was ever successful without a movement of the people to implement the remedy.
I'm the director of the Center for Urban Research and Education. And to the extent that I can provide information, data, maps, and so forth, that would help the cause, and I can get my center to do that. And I've got students that are actually definitely would be very interested in being a part of this effort, and I will be part of the effort to help you get it passed.
So I think it boils down to a actually very simple issue as to why suburban school districts like South Orange and Hamilton that are integrated and others that aren't right now want to get behind this, is because we can all agree we want our schools to improve. And a necessary component of that improvement is having an integrated, diverse school district. And I think there's a recognition by Hamilton and South Orange and quite a number of other school districts that if they are really committed to improving their schools, then they are committed to diversifying and integrating their schools.
I just want to say a word about the type of support we currently have in our legislature. Independent of our governor deciding to do nothing about this, we do have some significant support from very significant leaders in our legislature. So we're happy to have Mila JC, who's the co-chair of the Committee on Public Schools, who has endorsed our proposal, who's endorsing our proposal. Obviously, we had Assemblywoman Sumter, who was here, who has also given support to the work we've done, in addition to getting an affirmative response from the Legislative Black Caucus to hold hearings around the state on school segregation. So that is a big win that we can trust, the Legislative Black Caucus to help us push forward. Assemblyperson Wimberly is also a supporter of what we have laid out, and we know that not only has he been a sponsor of this experience, but Speaker Coughlin has also endorsed this proposal. So we have high-level leaders in the Democratic Party in our legislature that have endorsed this particular proposal, and it's up to us to hold them to it.
Schools and the implication of segregation in schools is a very important part of this conversation. You know, it's been 67 years since Brown v. Board of Education, and it's been 64 years since Little Rock. And yet, in 2021, we in New Jersey and indeed across the country are experiencing greater segregation of our schools and greater disparities in the outcomes and the input that those schools and those children get. And we have got to put a stop to it. Now, there are a lot of reasons why this has happened, not the least of which is a concentration of poverty, not the least of which has been the redlining policies, not the least of which has been the funding, the under-resourcing of communities where you have large swaths of people of color and of lower socioeconomic status. I commend our teachers and our administrators and all of our staff and in all of our schools, particularly those who've had to fight their way through this pandemic and ensure that our children in the poorer school districts have had access to broadband, have had access to laptops, and have been coached and taught all through that experience. Y'all are on the front lines. I am particularly appreciative of this organization from the beginning when we fought for fair housing in New Jersey to now where we're looking at issues of school segregation. If we want something to change, then we have to develop our plan, back our plan, plan our work, and then work that plan. You're so vital to that important undertaking. Don't get discouraged. Do not think that change cannot happen. It is happening every day around us. We want good change. We want transformative change. Down here in Washington, D.C., we're fighting hard to make sure that there's a two-track approach to the infrastructure bills. Of course, we need bricks and mortar infrastructure bill, but equally important is that we need to be able to lift up the infrastructure, the human infrastructure, from the baby to the elderly, to the working family, to the family that needs assistance. There's so much that has to be done. You all are instrumental in getting those things done because you communicate with people in your communities and in your organizations. Thank you, and God bless you. God bless you for the work that you do.
The rest. But we've got to have folks understand that change is good for them. And because it is, and the studies show, the academia shows, the last panel brought out, the panel before that we're all better when we're more diverse. That is a significant challenge for all of us. One I'm more than willing to take on because it sounds cliche, but it's not. When our children do better, we all do better. And frankly, I'm looking forward to the opportunity for helping make a difference in that. We're not allowing our children to succeed. Let's stay with that and get to the point where we solve other issues as a result of it. It's just so important. You and I both know when you go to a community, realtors say, go take a look at the school, see who's coming out. And you immediately get to the kind of housing policies and the segregation and all the things that go with it that people see far too often. I live in what I think is the 10th most diverse town now in the state of New Jersey, in Union, New Jersey. And I think not only is that a wonderful thing to say, it would be great that if we all lived in the even part of New Jersey where we all have the same balance. Nothing wrong with shooting for another goal like that. And I look forward to being part of the solution with you all. I thank you all for your participation. The insights have been magnificent and look forward to getting some legislation done that helps the cause move forward. Thank you. Thank you.
This is a jumping off point. This is a conversation we need to continue moving forward together. We need to exercise all of our opportunities and leverage points that we can, whether it be conversations with legislators, conversations with governors, and others that we have a space or a voice in, to say, what are we going to do about this and how do we continue to move forward, whether it be incrementally or big, bold steps that we can put forward together. So I'll just say this. I want to thank you. I want to thank you because of your commitment to this work. I want to assure you that you have the commitment of 200,000 educators statewide who also know that we've got to talk about this issue and we've got to help resolve this issue. And we also know that as educators, we are the ones, right? When we talk about that next generation, we are the ones that can really have such a great impact on not only our students, but the conditions that our students learn in and the situation that they find themselves in, the opportunities they're afforded. And we stand here ready to do that moving forward together.